rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Start with roll call. Mr. Innocenti. Here. Mr. Bates. Here. Mr. Preston. Here. Mr. Garino. Here. And Mrs. Small. Here. First item on the agenda is the approval or amendment of the meeting minutes from January 18th, 2022. Entertain a motion.
Second.
Questions? Any edits to the minutes? Not, we'll call the vote. Mr. Garino.
Yes.
Mrs. Smallwood.
Good, abstain.
Thank you. Mr. Innocenti.
Yes.
Mr. Bates.
Yes.
And Mr. Preston.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up is a presentation of financial statement, and I will turn it over to Jennifer Kay, our fiscal officer. So, Jennifer, meet Linda, Linda meet Jennifer. I'm sorry, I skipped right over that. Let's go back. Thank you, Cheryl. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda and addendum items?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Innocenti?
Yes.
Mr. Bates? Mrs. Smallwood?
Yes.
Mr. Preston?
Yes.
And Mr. Garino?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right, back to the financial statement.
Thank you. Good morning. Actually, I am going to wait to go over this as part of the fiscal finance work session of our whole business.
So we will move on to the presentation of the vouchers. And I will entertain a motion to approve all the vouchers except those for Preston and Arms.
Second.
Any questions on the vouchers? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. Mr. Bates?
Yes.
Mr. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. Garino?
Yes.
Mrs. Smallwood?
Yes.
And Mr. Innocenti?
Yes.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the vouchers for Preston.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smallwood?
Yes.
Mr. Innocenti?
Yes.
Mr. Garino?
Yes.
Mr. Bates? And Mr. Preston?
Abstain.
And last, entertain a motion to approve the vouchers for Arms Trucking.
Second.
Thank you. On the vote, Mr. Innocenti?
Yes.
Mr. Garino?
Yes.
Mrs. Smallwood?
Yes.
Mr. Preston?
Yes.
And Mr. Bates?
Abstain.
Thank you. All right, we will move into old business. Matt McHugh will do presentation on Thompson Library property. Just a quick recap, Mr. Erwin Leffel, one of our township trustees, came to us and requested that we look at the possibility of building a small pocket park on State Route 528, just north of Thompson Square. So when he requested that, one of the things we did is we had Paul Pira, say hi Paul. Paul is our park biologist, had him go out and do a natural quality evaluation index. That is a scoring of the biological values, biological indices associated with that project. And we also had Matt McHugh, our deputy director, and his planning team put together a concept for what that park might look like. So I'm going to turn over to Matt and over to Paul and let them go over that plan.
All right.
No.
So as John was saying, Paul and I went out in early December and took a look at the property. Basically, the property is kind of off of 528 and then just north of Thompson Road. The new library in Thompson is kind of right here. The area is a little bit older, but this is kind of new library. And then this parcel here is about a little over an acre. It's like 1.3 acres. Paul and I took a look. There's actually on the adjoining property kind of a nice forested wetland area. And then really the proximity and connectivity to sort of Thompson Ledges is down in this area south of Thompson Road, but there's another stretch of kind of the ledges that sort of come up through these parcels, which are owned by the Thompson Township Park Board. So Paul did an evaluation of the property. I don't know if you want to touch on that real quick, Paul, before we kind of...
Yeah, sure. So, for many years, I've been with the park for almost 20 years, that we go out, one of the interesting things we do go is to look at new potential pieces of property. We've developed a scoring system, basically a report card. When I go out there, it's a one-page checklist of how you score a piece of property that has to be biology and the ecological kind of integrity and function of the property and relationship to others' properties. We look at, so I have, I don't know, probably 60, 75 properties that I've looked at over the years, and so I have a kind of a scorecard of A, B, C almost, and D, whatever, and a rating system for properties. One of the big things is, of course, size of the property comes into play, and this is a very tiny piece of property, so that didn't score well, but ecologically, the significance, obviously, Matt just touched on is the ledges, and that's a highly significant area in northeast Ohio. Hot spot for rare birds, hot spot for rare plants and endangered plants that grow on these ledges. So it's significant. I personally always wanted to have something up in that neighborhood. It's just such a special place. But, you know, I'm not going to touch on obviously some of the other things that are involved with a small park and developing. But interesting, it scored low, of course, just because it's a 1 acre piece of property, so it's not going to score real high. But just to let you know, there's definitely some potential and very significant things in that neighborhood that would warrant some consideration if we could get connections and trails and things like that.
So the existing property is significantly just mowed turf, and there's a kind of a small meadow area that towards the back of the property that's kind of taking shape, but the majority of it is just mowed turf. I believe it was maybe a former school who was on the site, an elementary school. So after Paul and I took a look at it, Paul put together his evaluation. Like you said, the parcel itself didn't score real high, but looking at from more of a kind of open space and a planning standpoint, and also looking at the connectivity with the library, kind of maybe how we could develop this in a way as sort of a trailhead or something along those lines. So I put together kind of a basic overall, what I'd call schematic master plan. This is actually the parcel down here, the library parcel's here, and then this is that larger context of the Thompson Park Board properties. So what we kind of looked at was, maybe developing a small parking area for 10 cars, simple little picnic shelters. These are images of what we did out at Throwing Meadows. This is a boardwalk from Clarendon Woodlands that would be needed through some of the wetland areas. And then also looking at if we could connect into that larger kind of open space of the property that the Thompson Park Board manages. Maybe we could look at, they've done some things down the ledges to give access to kind of get down and actually see the ledges. So looking at that, again, kind of pulling access in off of Madison, we kept things up closer to the front of the property, again, without doing any subsoil investigation. At this point, if there's remnants of the old elementary school there, we might have to push that further back in. But that was just kind of the initial idea of creating a small access point. And then really the yellow kind of dash line represents maybe a aggregate trail network kind of through this property and the library property. And then this is where, again, looking long-term, the adjoining property, potentially getting some kind of conservation easement, which would encompass the wetland areas, doing maybe a boardwalk connection through there, and then that would give access into the Thompson property, the park board's property, where we could do more of a primitive trail with maybe a set of steps and create kind of a trail that would go down along the ledges there. Again, this is more big picture, like Paul said, looking at just kind of a small property, maybe initially that may not score as well. It's just long-term looking at if this is maybe a way to develop kind of a larger